going to go first.
Ready.
Good morning. My name is Mary Innes, and on behalf of the deacons, I welcome you today. Wherever you are on your own personal journey, we welcome you. Today's announcements, the welcomer of the day is Janet Trippy. If she's here, would she stand and give a wave? So Janet has the green booklet with all kinds of information if you want to know anything about our church, or you're interested in becoming a member maybe someday. So please see her after the service. She'll be making herself available back around the table in the back. Also, since we're talking table, in the outdoor service, our offerings there's a basket for offerings on the table to use either before you come in or after you are leaving the sitting area. If you would like to have our deacons and prayer team join you in praying for a concern or joy during the week, please fill out one of the blue or green prayer cards and place it in the offering basket on the usher's table in the back. Next Sunday evening, July 16, from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m., Arts on the Green will present a concert featuring Chuck and Mud here on the Common. Yulman's ice cream truck will be here for this family event. In case of rain, same day, same time, same ice cream truck, we move inside to Gifford Hall. Please take some time this month of July to visit the Shrewsbury Public Library because they have a unique and attractive FCC 300th anniversary display. It was designed by Linda Wagner and will be there through the month of July. And we invite you to join us for iced tea and lemonade outside the west entrance after the service this morning. And now please stand as you are able, greet each other, and pass the peace.
good I'm down here. I can inch closer to you, you know. I am so thrilled to be back worshiping with you. I want to tell you that the mission trip to the Fuller Center in New York City was fantastic. All of the youth and adults had a very good time. The Fuller Center, which has been historically connected to Habitat for Humanity, did a wonderful job of exposing us to different neighborhoods and different types of affordable housing throughout New York. And we will be sharing some reflections from the youth throughout the summer as little mission moments. Given their summer schedules and return to college, it was impossible for us to get them all 8 together on a single Sunday. So you will be delighted by little stories from the youth, vignettes throughout the summer about their trip. This is a time for us to give thanks to the glory of God, to be able to step back from the busyness of our week and to say that we are not in control. The weight of the world is not upon our shoulders. For if it is, then we are truly mistaken. Because Jesus invites us to take on his yoke, because its burden is easy. So may we come, releasing the things that weigh us down, and instead put on the grace of Christ, which leads us always to love. May we worship together. Creator God, you mapped out the stars and the sands and the trees and the lakes. There is nothing that was not the work of your hands or blessed by your love. You designed the seas and the fish and the birds and the fruit. You are our life and soul. And blessed by your love, and came among us in word and in flesh. In all things reflect your beauty and grace. So we indeed sing God's praises with our opening hymn, Just a Closer Walk with Thee.
When my feeble life
we share together in this time of confession. Creator God, we come before you asking for your grace for all that you have made and we have destroyed, for all that you have shared and we have squandered, for all that you have saved and we have abused, for all that you have loved and we have dismissed, for all that you have blessed and we have neglected, for all that you have suffered and we have ignored, for all that you are and we have doubted. Renew us in your love, recreate us, reconnect us, and restore us to your community of creation, that we may live again in you. Amen. Listen now to the comforting words of God's assurance. We were not there when God laid the foundations of the earth, and yet God had us in mind. We were not there when Christ calmed the seas or when the Holy Spirit gave visions at Pentecost, and yet we are part of those holy acts. We are a part of something bigger than ourselves, bigger than our mistakes. We are forgiven, loved, and empowered to serve. Amen. I would like to invite forward the children who have just found the Legos to come over to me and to instead do the children's message and then to go back to Miss April. Good morning. I'm so glad all of you are here today. Yeah, I see you took off your shoes. That's okay. It's comfy. I have a question. Were you ever taught what to do if maybe your shirt or your skirt caught on fire? What were you taught to do? Not that. All right, adults, what were you taught to do? Stop, drop, and roll. All right, so we learn that usually as we're young people that you want to stop so you're not flaming. You want to drop down to the ground and you want to roll to put out any flame. But were you ever taught, adults, question for you too, were you ever taught what to do when you were caught doing something naughty? All right, it's also a 3-word response. I'm going to teach it to you and they're going to learn, okay? It's stop, breathe, pray. So if you think you were doing something you're not supposed to do, and you catch yourself doing it, what's the first thing you do? Stop. You stop doing what you're doing. Okay? And just walk away. That might be the right answer, but you stop, and then you take a second, and I want you to practice with me. I want you to take a deep breath in. All right, I'm going to teach you a special way to take a breath. Karina knows how to do this. It's called a balloon. Have you ever done a balloon breath? Any of you? No? You might have. All right, here's what you do. You blow up your balloon, and then you exhale your balloon. All right, congregation, you too. Big balloon breath. All right, so you stop, you breathe, and then you pray. And here's the prayer I'm going to invite you to think about. God, help me to do the right thing. Sometimes that right thing is to walk away. Sometimes that right thing is to apologize. Sometimes the right thing is to go tell somebody what's going on. But what I want you to do, if you find yourself doing something naughty, calling names, taking something that's not yours, being someplace you're not supposed to be, stop, breathe, pray. Stop, breathe, pray. So we're going to say it all together. What do you do if you're getting caught doing something naughty? Stop, breathe, pray. And the reason I wanted the adults to know that because it works for them too. Because sometimes they do things that are naughty. And sometimes they have to stop and remember to stop, breathe, pray. And so we're going to ask God right now in our little prayer, that same prayer. Will you pray with me? Dear God, help me to do the right thing. Amen. All right, you're welcome to go back over to April. Go ahead.
This morning's first reading is Romans 7, verses 15 through 25. I do not understand my own actions, for I do not do what I want, but I do the very thing I hate. Now, if I do what I do not want, I agree that the law is good. But in fact, it is no longer I who do it, but sin that dwells within me. For I know that the good does not dwell within me, that is, in my flesh. For the desire to do the good lies close at hand, but not the ability. For I do not do the good I want, but the evil I do not want is what I do. Now, if I do what I do want, or do not want, it is no longer I doing it, it is the sin that dwells within me. So I find that a law be a law that when I want to do what is good, evil lies close at hand. For I delight in the law of God in my most inner self, but I see in my members another law at war with the law of my mind, making me captive of the law of sin that dwells in my members. Wretched person that I am, who will rescue me from this body of death? Thanks be to God through Jesus Christ our Lord. So then with my mind I am enslaved to the law of God, but with my flesh I am enslaved to the law of sin. Second reading is Matthew chapter 11, verses 28 through 30. Come to me, all of you who are weary and are carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light.
I really enjoy that passage Bill read from us from Romans. It's a little bit of a tongue twister, but it has such deep and rich meaning to it. What I found fascinating as I was preparing for this morning was how many different interpretations of who was speaking, who is the I in this text. And I'm going to list just 6 of them because I got overwhelmed with how many different interpretations there were. So some people think the I is Paul, but pre-conversion. Some people think the I is Paul post-conversion. Some people think that the I is Adam, meaning humanity. Some people think that the I is the tribe of Israel. Some people think that the I was Christians, and some people think that the I speaking was a symbolic representation of the law itself speaking. So what I'm giving you here is there's lots of interpretations. That's what I'm telling you. A lot of people have a lot of very strong opinions about who is speaking in this text. And that's what we are going to talk about today, is opinions. What we can take from this text is that regardless of who is the protagonist in this particular passage from Romans, is that the law is good. There is not a sense of the law itself being inherently bad, but that the law can be used when pushed to its extreme for purposes it did not intend. So we can think about this in our own context pretty easily. we can be so overzealous in something that we believe in, something that we think is the right thing, that we can push it past its usefulness into a place of being counterproductive. Leonard Sweet, who is a theologian and author, recently wrote a book called 180. And within it, it has 34 different stories of people who have come to change their minds. It's little vignettes of individual stories of people who believe so ferociously in something until an encounter happened. Whether that encounter was with God or with a new experience or with a new person, but that they changed their minds in 180 degrees. And I have 3 simple examples of that for us this morning. One well-known, F.W. de Klerk, who is the president of South Africa, a strong supporter of the apartheid separation of whites and blacks, who moved along a journey to the dismantlement of apartheid and the start of a multicultural, multicolor government and nation. The other story is Megan Phelps Roper. She is the granddaughter of the founder of the Westboro Baptist Church, who is known for its anti-LGBT protests and protests at funerals of those who served in the military. And she came to a point in her life where she realized that the anger that was inside of her was actually opposite of the grace and love of God. So she now is a speaker who goes around the country talking about tolerance and the capacity to listen to 2 sides of a story. And I read a biography recently of a gentleman who I was not familiar with, but am intrigued about, Reverend Paul Shank, spelled differently than our Shank, so no relation. But Reverend Paul Shank was born Jewish, converted to evangelical Christianity, and was on the forefront of the anti-abortion movement. And he was virulent in his activities, helping to propagate some of the most visual anti-abortion demonstrations across the country. And it was until Dr. Barnett Slepian was murdered and Reverend Shank sent flowers to his widow, and she returned them smashed in a box, saying that your virulent choice has actually led to death. And it really took him to heart to really rethink what he was doing in life. And now he too has become a public speaker who talks about being able to listen to sides of the story that he was unable to hear before. And in the biography, it was actually his biographer, a woman whose last name was Disney, who talked to him after years of having an in-depth relationship about her own reasons for having an abortion. And so it was a full circle of being able to listen when we generally tend to close ourselves off. And so any of these topics or any side of any of these topics can be reasons to go so far that we lose connection with what we originally intended. And that's exactly what we know of the Apostle Paul. He was such a fervent believer in the law that he used it when he was a Pharisee to actually discriminate and to persecute the early Christian church. He was known as one of the most ferocious ambassadors of the Jewish law until his experience with Christ, his moment of seeing another side of the story, helped him to understand love and grace. And again, I want to reiterate that the law itself is not bad. The Jewish law of the Torah is the same law that we receive as part of our Old Testament. It is good and true, but pushed to an extreme, as anything pushed to an extreme, can lead us into places where we're actually counterproductive. And so we get the voice in Romans this morning, I do not what I want to do. I know what I'm supposed to do, and yet I do the wrong thing. So it is this inner turmoil about where does truth lie. And we can see this about the truth or the closed-mindedness in things that are grand scale and the things that are small scale. So here's a few more examples. Some of you out there may have a firm belief in the truth of one particular car maker as the best car brand ever. And you may not waver from that. You may actually get in some steep arguments about Ford is better than Chevy, or don't you ever buy a Toyota. But it may mean that you miss an innovation that was made by a different manufacturer. The same thing can happen with sports teams. Come on. You can be so riled up that your sports team is the one, the truth, the only, that you cannot even acknowledge a good play made by a member of the opposing sports team. The truth pushed too far can close you off from seeing the greatness of an athlete. Or religion. We can push our own Christianity so far that we become what we abhor, that we become closed-minded, or we become pessimistic, or we become hyper-vigilant about our sense of being right, and therefore exclude some of the beauty or the learnings or the capacity to talk either ecumenically across other Christian faiths or multiculturally. I'm going to pause for the bells. We can become so locked in that our own country of origin becomes a marker for us that allows us to seem greater than or to hold a better truth than someone who is born in another country. Or we can do it because our profession. Of course, doctors are better than RNs. You know, we can think about this. Or, of course, being an academic is better than being a blue-collar worker. We have these mindsets that can close us off from the fullness of the human experience. Educational status, political party, all of these can lead us into extremes that cut us off from being in conversation with others. And that's what Paul warns us about in his letter to the Romans, that we do things because we are set in our ways and we do not step back to look at the bigger picture. And that is where we hear the last words of the pericope from this morning. Thank God for Jesus. Because for Paul and for many of us, Jesus is the one who helps us to step back and to get a better sense of the big picture. Jesus is, if you look on your bulletin cover, I think Jesus is that little red block that helps us move from conflict to resolution. Because we can't do it on our own. And that's what Paul is saying. We cannot do this on our own. We become so trapped in our own perspectives that unless we have an outside influence, whether that is Christ or that is another person, we cannot be our own transformative agent. And that is the beauty of Jesus' message that we heard today from the gospel. Jesus' invitation to put on his yoke, to say that we are not in charge of everything, that our own worldview is not the only perspective that exists, that we are not in charge of pushing our opinion to its extremes, but that we are invited to put on Jesus' yoke and to follow him. A yoke is an agrarian reference to a piece of equipment that a mule or a horse or a donkey would wear. And it means that they are following someone, that there is someone else who is in charge of the reins, leading them down the furrows. And so it is a relief to put on a yoke because it means that we are giving up control. We are giving up control and handing the reins over to Jesus, who helps us to see the path that was already created before us and gives us the comfort to move with assurance that we are following in an intended direction. And so I invite us to rethink a bit about the ways in which we have become stuck in our own ruts, stuck in our own ways of thinking, stuck in our own truth, and to be open to the experience of handing the reins over to Jesus, to be able to release the burdens of trying to fix the world ourselves, and to hear how there may be a new option or a new way that moves us to a middle ground that is actually moves us further down the line towards God's love, justice, grace, and equity than being paralyzed in our positions. This is the challenge that is open for all of us, not simply Christians, but all of us who experience this world. It is the challenge Paul offers to his readers and listeners, and it is the challenge that is extended to us today. May you go home and think this week. May you go home and pray this week. May you go home and open your hearts this week. Amen. If you haven't noticed, I change the words to communion every single month to pick up a different theme or a different area of focus. And this week, while we are worshiping outside, I took advantage of thinking about the God of creation and the gifts of life itself. And so, will you join me in this sacrament of communion? The earth is the Lord's and everything in it. The trees of the fields clap their hands. The birds of the air sing songs of praise. And if we should fail to express our worship, even the rocks and stones would cry out. And so we lift up our hearts and we lift up our voices and we offer thanksgiving and adoration to the Lord, the Creator of all. Blessed are you, Sovereign of the universe, for from seeds sown into the earth you have given us the gift of bread to feed and nourish us. And at Jesus' last meal with his friends before facing the cross, our Lord took the bread and blessed it and broke it, and he passed it among them, saying, "Body broken for you, take and eat. Do this in remembrance of me." Blessed are you, sovereign of the universe, for the grapes which grow ripe and sweet on the vine. You have given us the gift of wine to refresh and to heal us. And at Jesus' last meal with his friends before facing the cross, our Lord took the cup of wine and blessed it, and he passed it among them, saying, "This is my blood shed for you. Take and drink. Do this in remembrance of me." And now we come to your table again, Jesus, mindful of how you laid your life down so that we and creation could be born anew, mindful of how you took your life up again so that we and creation could be filled with life abundant, mindful that we cannot earn or purchase this privilege, but that it is your grace which beckons us, and your grace which ensures that all of creation may be one and whole. May your Spirit work in these fruits of the earth so that they may become for us a sharing of Christ's body and blood. May your Spirit work in us who are children of the earth, that we may be transformed into Christ's body, carrying his life, his care, and his salvation to all of creation. Amen. May we join in a single verse of "As We Gather at Your Table." I invite you now to share in the blessing of the bread and in the cup. May you take your bread, and if you do not have your communion elements, Kathy can run some over to you. We're doing self-serve this morning. So take and eat. This is the body of Christ, broken for you. And in this small cup, we are reminded of the gift of God's grace. This is the cup of the new covenant. Take and drink. Will you pray with me? Holy God, we are grateful for this holy meal made from the gifts of wheat and of the fruit of the vine. Help us to know that we are connected always to you and to this earth. Help us to be good stewards of creation and good stewards of the love and grace in which you bestow to us. We give you thanks for this most holy meal. Amen. We will move right into our joys and concerns. This is a chance for us to share together anything that has been on your hearts or on your minds that you would like to offer up in prayer today. Well, I give thanks for a very successful and safe mission trip. I offer in prayer from our list prayers for the family of Nancy Lang, whose funeral was held at the church yesterday morning, officiated gratefully by our own church member, Cindy Maybeck. Prayers for the devastated staff and leadership at the New Hampshire Boy Scout camp who have to start a new session of camp today. Oh, goodness, after a scout was killed in a boating accident on Friday. So we indeed pray not only for the camp, but the family and all of those impacted. Oh, for my beautiful wife on her birthday tomorrow. I'm assuming you know who you are. Prayers for the Hughes family on the passing of their brother-in-law/uncle. And prayers for Cindy, who is Katrina Lawyer's aunt, as she faces a new medical diagnosis. Praise be to God. Norma is reporting that her sister is cancer-free at the moment and sends word of appreciation for our prayers. May we join together in a word of prayer. God of grace and glory, God who reminds us that we are not God, help us always to find humility, to seek for grace. Give us the strength to stop when we need to stop, to breathe when we need to breathe, and to pray when we need to pray. Help us, God, to remove the hypocrisy from our lives, to challenge our own ways of thinking, to be better because you call us to be better. Help us to do this as individuals and as church and as community and as a nation. Help us to do a better job of caring for your cosmos. God, we lift up our prayers today for those who are sick and addicted, for those who have faced unexpected tragedies, and for those still reeling from those effects. God, we know that life is precious and that each moment is a gift. Help us to treasure our time with one another. Help us to put aside old grievances so that we may forge a better future. God, we ask that your healing balm be upon our hearts, giving strength to our bodies and to our minds. We ask that you continue to be with those who are in healing professions, doctors, nurses, first responders, social workers, caregivers, nurses' aides, all of those who give of themselves so that others may have life in greater abundance. God, we pray for the members of our congregation who are homebound and those who have moved far away from us, because we know we are drawn together not only through our name or through our church membership, but we are drawn together in the Spirit of Christ, who invites us all to take on his yoke and to feel the lessening of our burdens. We pray these things in Jesus' name because he has invited us to do so, and he has given us, his disciples, these words to pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
When we give back to God, the creator of all that was and is to come, we are participating in the care of God's creation. Our offerings support our earth stewardship ministry, which cultivates pollinator gardens, helps us to maintain an energy-efficient church building, and advocates for reductions in fossil fuel consumption. As God has given us the bounty of this earth, may we give back to God with thanksgiving.
There's a balm in Gilead to make the wounded whole. There is a balm in Gilead to heal the sin-sick soul. Sometimes I feel discouraged and think my works in
invite us to pray together our prayer of dedication. In this time of worship, we have remembered the whole of creation, and that the whole of creation is filled with God's grace, and that the whole of creation has been renewed in God's love, and that the whole of creation reflects the glory of God. So now, in peace and hope, to share this saving message in word and action, in risk and compassion, may God bless us and our offerings to this very task. Amen. Our closing hymn is Lord, I Want to Be a Christian. As we prepare to go forth from this beautiful setting on the green, I challenge you to risk something, to risk opening up your heart to others, to risk opening your heart to being more loving, to risk opening your heart to being more holy, to risk opening your heart to Jesus. And may it be filled with the glory of God so that you know God's love. Amen.
Seek